we've been walking alongside Jesus as he emerges into his public ministry. We've seen him proclaim his mission. We've seen him recruit co-leaders. We've seen him minister to those who came to him with needs. We discovered that no one can please everyone. And so opposition arises and questions and challenges, and some begin to try to undermine what he's doing. And we discover the disciples learning and understanding more and more about the potential and the purpose of this ministry. Today, this morning, we have a brief passage from Luke 8, yet another experience, mostly a learning experience for his disciples, perhaps for us as well. It comes to us beginning at verse 22. I'll read these words, start in yellow, and invite you to read aloud together the words in white. One day Jesus said to his disciple, "Let's go over to the other side of the lake." So they got into a boat and set out.
As they sailed, he fell asleep. A squall came down on the lake, so that the boat was being swamped, and they were in great danger.
The disciples went and woke him, saying, "Master, Master, we're going to drown." He got up and rebuked the wind and the raging waters. The storm subsided, and all was calm.
"Where is your faith?" he asked his disciples. In fear and amazement, they asked one another, "Who is this? He commands even the winds and the water, and they obey him."
I may have spoken in the past about French philosopher named Albert Camus, considered by those who like to label philosophers an existentialist, and perhaps particularly a pessimistic existentialist. He's associated in my mind with this story, this metaphor that he thinks describes the reality of life. A fairly simple story. Just imagine yourself running across the ground, being chased by some fierce beast that you know is far more powerful than anything you can withstand. So you just keep running until finally, in desperation, you jump into a pit. Very quickly you discover as you're falling that the pit is deeper than you thought, and there is yet another beast waiting at the bottom. And so you grab hold of roots along the side of the pit to stop yourself, at least for the moment, and you breathe a sigh of relief, only to look up and see rodents nibbling at the roots of the pit. Not a very exciting image of life, but it's one that he offers. Camus is even more associated with stories and writings he tells about an ancient Greek figure named Sisyphus. Sisyphus was condemned by the gods to an endless task. Each day he would rise and he would have to push a large boulder up a steep hill, inch by inch and foot by foot, kept climbing and pushing and pushing and climbing until he reached the summit of the hill, at which point he would let go and the boulder would roll right back down the hill to the bottom, so that the next day he would start all over, pushing it up the hill. And yet, in some ways, he wasn't a tragic figure, though it sounds that way, because, as it turns out, Sisyphus knew what he had pushing the boulder to the top, that it would roll down, and it was simply his task in his life to start every day pushing and climbing. In Luke's gospel, we see yet another brief glimpse at what seems to describe a lot of the realities of life. Here, the disciples on a boat, on a great lake, in a storm. Certainly something we can understand. Jesus sleeps, and the storm grows worse. And the water comes rushing in, and the threat becomes more severe, and the fears grow, and the anxieties expand. And they react as we likely react. When storms are coming upon us, there are a variety of ways we can respond. One of them is to work really, really hard and pretend it's not storming. Bad things aren't happening. The money's not running out. The roof isn't leaking. Right? I'm not getting older and tired. My health isn't getting worse. Things aren't as troubling as other people want to say they are. We'll just pretend our way through this storm. The opposite is also an option. We can panic. We can panic, exaggerate, catastrophize. We can sit helplessly and hopelessly because we're sitting doing nothing and just panicking. You notice in this story that the disciples aren't quite aware that it's storming, so they're not pretending, they're not in denial. But they do seem to jump to panic pretty quickly. We don't hear anything of them bailing. Water's coming in, won't bail. Right? Maybe we need to steer the boat. Maybe we need to row a little bit. Maybe we need to find our ways to a little safer water, maybe a harbor nearby. Maybe we need to do something other than just sit there and panic. But that's the way they chose, and sometimes I guess we don't really have as much choice as we like to. We just act on instinct, and it overwhelms us. And that's what happens to them. They wake Jesus. Don't you care that we're drowning? How can you sleep through all of this? And we get this, challenging response. Where's your faith? Well, my faith washed out of the boat after the last big wave crash. What do you mean, where's my faith? It's storming. I'm not imagining this, right? The water's coming in, the boat's about to be swamped. I'm not exaggerating here. What do you mean, where is my faith? The storm, the wind, the waves, the rain crashing in. People over the centuries look at this particular story, and of course we're trying to find some deep meaning to it. It has to be about more than just that one moment, or at least we assume it must. And so we try to understand, well, what's he saying? And we come up with a wide variety of interpretations. Some people seem to have come to the belief that, Does this mean that if we have faith, it will never storm on us? It will always be calm and wonderful? A lot of people seem to believe that. And in my experience, when I run into people who seem to believe that, it always creates a little fear somewhere. What is this person going to do when the storm hits them? Christianity seems to teach at times that, well, you know, if you're a good Christian, which means you believe these 8 things and you do these 10 things and you don't do this long list of things, if you have somehow, you know, majored in righteousness as defined by somebody, well, if you're good enough, then only good things will happen to you and bad things won't. In fact, seems to be a lot of audience out there for that message. It says, hey, you know, just remember God is on your side all the time. Nothing is ever going to happen to you as long as you do the right things and believe the right things and worship in the right church and on and on. Building up what seem to be false hopes. The truth must rest somewhere between these false hopes and the panic and fear we saw in the disciples. Somewhere in between there must be the reality. Because in our real lives, we have storms. Things happen to us. And yes, sometimes we stir them up ourselves, but more than often, more than not, it's just something that comes upon us. Here it is, right in front of us. It's not our imagination. And it's not because we are somehow missed the boat in righteousness. It's because this seems to be life. Jesus, I don't think, is trying to promise them or us that if you have faith, you won't have storms. I do think Jesus is perhaps trying to help them believe that if you have faith, the storms won't necessarily destroy you. But if you got fired, laid off, the company let you go 2 weeks before your pension became full, those things happen. No amount of faith is going to change them. The storm is on its way. If you've got the diagnosis from your doctor that you did want to hear, if you have the condition that you never wanted to experience, the storm is there, and no amount of faith is going to change that. But faith may help you weather the storm. It seems to me that this faith that Jesus speaks of changes some of the tragic stories in our lives. And as I reflect back on Camus, I think faith changes his metaphor. That yes, indeed, there are times in life where we may be running, being chased by something that has us overwhelmed, and we may dive into a pit, and we may grab a hold of the roots. But somehow faith reassures us of the thing that Camus doesn't seem to understand. That as we're hanging there desperate and hoping, suddenly other people arrive and chase the beast away from the surface and throw us a rope. or they lower themselves on ropes and tie us into a harness and lift us up. And sometimes on those days when we're starting all over again and we're pushing that boulder up that hill, and suddenly we discover half a dozen other people alongside us pushing that boulder up that hill with us. Sometimes we discover that we can even have the vision and the faith to let go of our boulder and go help someone else with theirs. Where is your faith? Look around you. You have people with you. Together, you can survive this storm. Together, you can bail. And together, you can work. And together, you can encourage. And together, you can make progress. And together, you can comfort. Together, you can encourage. I think perhaps when Jesus asked his disciples, "Where's your faith?" he was saying, "Where's your faith in each other? Where is the faith that allows you to go from panic to working together, to asking for help, to accepting help, to offering help? Where is your faith that realizes that life doesn't just happen to us as an individual in a pit, or an individual pushing a boulder up a hill, or an individual panicking in the boat during a storm, but that we are clearly not alone, and our faith allows us to see and experience the companionship no matter what storms may come." I don't know how many of you are familiar with Hazleton, Indiana. Hazleton, small town, just unfortunately happens to be just a little bit downstream from where the two branches of the White River merge. I think of Hazleton a lot because Hazleton to me is that example of, you know what, it may not have rained there at all. They may have had clear skies for weeks, but somewhere up north, around Indianapolis where the White River comes through, or somewhere northeast, maybe over around Columbus where the other branch of the White River comes through, they have poured and rained for days after day after day, and that water all rushes out of their floodplain into those rivers, and those rivers come downstream and they merge, and Hazleton starts flooding. It hasn't rained there, but yet it's flooding. The storms were far, far away, and yet they are flooding. I think of that because very often in our lives, the storms are right overhead. They're happening to me. They're happening to someone very close to my family, right? And so they're happening right here. And I can see it storming, and I can understand, I got to prepare for this. I got to be ready for this. But I think sometimes what happens that catches us by surprise is when we're somewhere out on the edges being impacted by the storms that happen elsewhere. It's not me, it's not my family, it's another family. It's someone else I know, maybe a neighbor, maybe a distant relative, maybe someone in my church. It's not happening directly to me, and yet the storm is brewing and the storm is pouring, and it's going to have its impact on me eventually. I know in situations like that, you always tell yourself, now, wait a minute, this tragedy is not about me. And yet, so many of us on the edges of tragedy are deeply and powerfully impacted. And if we're not alert, we get overwhelmed. Why is that? Because as it turns out, there are many, many streams that flow into those rivers and that come downstream and eventually reach us. There are so many people we care about, that we know about, and tragedies and difficulties and challenges we hear about. And while none of them may be happening directly to any of us, we're still in the path of the flood. The storm is not here, but the flood is coming our way. And I think, honestly, that is a very potent metaphor for life in a small congregation. We care deeply about a number of people. And when things happen to them and things happen to people they care about, the waters start gathering and the flood starts heading our way. And we must be prepared. We must anticipate it coming. We must know what to do. We must be ready to ask for help. We must be ready and willing, equipped to offer help. Because the flood that comes from this direction and that direction and that direction and that direction sometimes surprise us, and they build up, and suddenly we find ourselves overwhelmed by it. Unfortunately, when you love people, it comes at a cost, because we feel their pain. We care about what hurts them. And we share even a little of the great agony that they're experiencing. And when you add that up from this family and that family and this person and that issue and this concern and that worry, any one of us at any time can suddenly find ourselves hip deep in grief and anger and pain and frustration. The kinds of things that wear you down and get you stuck in hopelessness and despair. Unless we're aware, unless we're prepared, unless we are talking, unless we are sharing, unless we are helping each other to grieve our losses, to talk about our pain, and to move through it. It's difficult enough in life to deal with the storm that's right overhead. The people of faith, people who love, have to be ready for the ones that are upstream as well. Where is your faith? Jesus would remind you that God is in the midst of all of your lives. And you really don't have to look as hard and as far as you think you do. Because they're right here. They're in the home, they're with the neighbors. They're in the old family photos. All of the messages and the messengers that God has sent our way to remind us, yes, the storm is here. Yes, the flood is coming. But you're not alone. Let us pray. Here and now, oh God, we could begin to name the people you sent our way in the midst of hope, those who have come searching for us when we seem to be lost, those who have lifted us up and put us back on our feet, those who have carried us when we've not been strong enough to even stand. Some of the people in this room have come from you to us. And by your grace, there have been times when we have been on a mission for you to help save and restore the people around us. And yet, oh God, the faithfulness that we've seen and the opportunities we have extend so far beyond just the people in this room. For you are never without resource. So continue, oh God, to allow us to see the ways in which you're responding to our needs. Allow us, oh God, to see the ways in which we can respond to the needs of those around us. That we can not only experience but witness to the truth that we're not alone. In Jesus' name.